Hi guys, welcome to the Haunted Valley. I just finished reading The Hunger by Whitley Strieber. I checked it out of the library, and I thought that because I was reading Salem's Lot again, and vampires just always fascinate me, that maybe it would be a good time to read it. I had watched the movie, I made note. I tend to, when I watch a movie, if there is a book, I tend to make a note to follow up with reading the book if I hadn't already read it. And I will talk a tiny bit about the movie, but I didn't love it. So we'll get to that a little later on. But as for the book, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was well written. I thought it was paced very nicely. I thought the characters were very developed. The book goes into great detail about the backstory of Miriam Blaylock, the main vampire, and it really explores her need to not be alone. She requires a companion. And I think it was mentioned exactly this way in the book, but she views her human companion, of which she has one at a time, she views them as like a pet. So it would be like you not wanting to be alone, so you get a cat or a dog, something like that. So she acquires a human to be used as her buffer from being alone, basically. And the whole premise is so intriguing. She is a special kind of vampire, and she creates hybrid vampires, so human vampire things that continue to age, but at a very, very slowed down pace. And she is immortal, and she promises immortality to her victim, companion, whatever you want to call them, and she tells them that they will live forever, which is not true, and she knows it's not true. And it's very interesting because you think vampire means, okay, fine, you're turned into one, you're gonna live forever, just like the person who created you. So the book begins, and her current companion, John, he has been with her for a couple hundred years, but that's it, and he's starting to deteriorate. He's starting to age, and we find out all this stuff about her, about how she knew about this, how she lied to him, how she just can't bear to be alone, and so she, in order to get her way, she fills these people's heads with promises. And it's something that really disturbs me. One of the things that disturbs me the most is that she keeps these vampires. So after they have gotten to the point where they cannot function anymore, they are just consumed with hunger, they are old and shrivelly and just horrible to behold, and they need to kill all the time to try and replenish. Rather than putting them out of their misery and then creating a new companion, she collects them. So she puts them in coffins and takes them with her when she moves. So she has an assortment of vampires who are basically her little entourage and who are forced to live this weird life of agony and pain, which I don't understand. If she loves them that much, why is she keeping them? That part really bothers me. So we see this starting to happen with John. It goes through a whole bunch of stuff. He is mad at her, rightly so, because she has lied to him. He had learned to live with himself for, killing other people. He was rationalizing it in his brain that, well, this is the only way to do it. I'll do it sparingly, only as much as I need to survive. And then come to find out, he was only prolonging his eventual demise it's not like he even gets eternity. So that collection of vampires really got under my skin. So she has been following this doctor's progress who has been working on halting the aging process, and her name is Sarah. She decides that that will be her next companion because John has killed the person that was being groomed to be her next companion after his death. So she sees Sarah as like a bonus. She's a companion and she's also a scientist, so she can help with the aging stuff. And she goes about trying to lure and claim Sarah. I think it's handled very well. We feel a tiny bit of sympathy for Miriam. We're given flashbacks of her life and how she has, turned several people and lived with them, and she does seem to genuinely love them and care about them while they are in her life, and then they become this just horrible, strong, primal being, like just driven by instinct and the need to satiate their bloodlust, and they're just unable to live in society, so she has to capture them and lock them up, and then apparently she has to keep them. That's her own thing. So there's a lot of science to it. There are like all these tests that they do on her, so that's really interesting to see a vampire go through some sort of like modern day testing. They find out that she's not a human. They find all these secrets out about her, and they do sleep studies on her, all this stuff. And she eventually is able to do a blood transfusion with Sarah and start the process of turning her into the next companion. So Sarah's boyfriend, Tom, is quite prominent in this story, and I just honestly don't care one way or another about him, but I do feel like he's kind of an idiot in that he lets his love for Sarah just kind of cloud his actions. He goes into the house when he shouldn't, he escapes, he goes back to the house, that kind of thing. And he and Sarah don't seem to have a let's talk this out type attitude. The ending is rather different from the movie in that Sarah tries to kill herself, and Miriam is like, how could you do this? Because she basically kills herself and then forces Miriam to put her in a coffin because she is now like John. She has reached the end of her living. She can't really die, and she missed out on all the stuff, which I guess to Sarah is worth it because she doesn't have to murder anyone, which is something that she didn't want to do. She was fighting very hard to not be a monster, and that's all well and good, but it's just so horrible, the idea of living forever in a coffin. That's your life. You're conscious, you're hungry, you are aware of stuff. I don't know. It's very weird, very creepy. So I recommend this book. There is another book, I think it's called The Wolfen, and I want to check that one out too. So if anyone has read that, let me know if it's worth it in the comments. I've got a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm reading, so I don't know when I'll get around to that, but it does sound like that could also be interesting. I was reading the back of this book, which has praise for The Wolfen, and most of them say, read this book with the lights on. So, I don't know. I take that with a grain of salt, because a lot of things that they find scary are not really scary to me. As for the movie, I really liked the concept of the movie. It's a 1983 movie. I think it was directed by Tony Scott, and It had David Bowie, Catherine Deneuve, and Susan Sarandon, all really great actors. I think the premise was good. I was disappointed that David Bowie had such a small part in it. I did not enjoy the special effects and the aging that they did on David Bowie. It looked really bad. And some of the stylistic choices I thought were horrible. Like the slow motion stuff, the fast cuts in certain spots, the shrieking noises that were in it sometimes. They were piercing and awful, overly dramatic. And after I watched it and I looked up the director, I was very shocked to find out that he directed Top Gun. It just blew my mind because this was so amateurish in ways, and Top Gun is so epic movie type stuff that it just surprised me. I enjoyed the musical choices for the movie. I did not particularly enjoy the ending. I thought it was very campy, very over the top. The falling to the death, that kind of thing. I liked that they used the little pendants as sharp instruments to cut their victims. In the book, it's a scalpel. So I thought that the Ankh was more interesting, and it gave a connection to Miriam's past. I might have mentioned it before, but I did not like the movie enough to watch it again. I found it dragging in parts. Yeah, it was a movie that I was glad I had seen because of, pop culture and cult film status and all that stuff, but I will not be adding it to my list of movies that I enjoy. The ending I also found was weird. I know they were keeping it open so that there could be a sequel, but I mean, obviously they changed it from the book ending, but it doesn't make sense that Miriam would be in the coffin and then Sarah has just kind of assumed the role of Miriam in a way because she wanted nothing to do with that life. So there's that. Another thing that really disturbed me was the death of the monkey. The one monkey kills the other. Very graphic. I don't know. I didn't enjoy that very much. I definitely recommend the book. I know there are 2 sequels that were written about it. I don't know that I need to read any more about this story. This is the only book I've ever read by Whitley Strieber, and I like it. I don't know anything else about any of his other stuff, so I don't know if that was just this one was really good or if he's someone who I will enjoy more. Yeah, let me know down below if you've read any of his other stuff. I'm especially interested in The Wolf Inn, and that is it. Have a spooky day.